Hi, I'm Adam and this is the Uplink port. Back in the early 2000s, it was quite common for a service provider to give you a user guide with your hardware that not only explained about the hardware itself, but also gave you a general idea of the service that you were supposed to be getting at the time. This thing covers things like contention and also what downloading multiple files at once would do to your broadband experience, not only for you, but everyone else using your router and connection. Things I think would field an awful lot of service calls today. Now, these books were great about giving you information on the services available, additional services, and more importantly, how to set things up. One of which is BT Broadband Talk. However, this guide does very little other than explaining what we already know, in order to get this work, at the time you had to go to their BT Broadband Talk website, log in with your details, and then a configuration file would be sent, presumably via TR069, to the hub, typically within an hour, ready for you to use. Now, I'm extremely confident, quietly confident, that we're actually going to get further on this today, because since the last video, someone has stepped up. They've made changes to the SipServer that we were using, and hopefully I should be able to get a load more debug information out of it to hopefully find out where we're going wrong. So whether you're into retro networking gear or just curious on how things work, stick around. Okay, so in the last video, I left it literally with an SOS saying I need someone to have a look at that SipServer for me, see if I'm missing something or whether someone can build some debugging into it so I can actually see what the server's doing with the request back and forth from the hub and the soft phones and the Yealink phone I had set up on the desk, because we were intermittently seeing calls actually work on other devices, but every call to the hub was failing with a cancel message, and I could not see why. We needed to debug the server. And someone, amazingly, a gentleman called Brad, who is currently in Discord, which I will get into slightly later, but a gentleman called Brad from New Zealand stepped up and said, I can add this for you, let me do it, I want to be involved. And true to his word, he has added debugging into that SipServer for me. So I'm extremely excited to go and download that, compile it, get it running, and see what the server is telling us is going on when we actually try to A, dial out from this, and also B, try and dial into it, because at the minute there are issues all over the place. Now, several weeks have gone by since that last video and this one, and looking back at some of the bits that I did, there is some improvements I can make in terms of how I was doing debugging with all of it, so I will definitely do that today. But also the general feedback I've had from a lot of you who have reached out to me outside of YouTube, as well as in the comments, have actually said my logic and train of thought with all of it match what they were expecting as well. So I haven't completely shot myself in the foot. I was expecting to get shouted at left, right and centre, but generally a lot of you are in agreement with what I was doing. So, and a lot of you have actually given me suggestions on getting things working with Asterisks as well. But first of all, I owe it to Brad to see if we can get this working with the SipServer, and then we're going to dive into the Asterisks side of stuff, because there are a few comments on circumventing the authentication side of stuff, so I'm keen to see if that works as well. Also, we have a second hub that's actually turned up, as you can probably see next to us, because my assumption was that we might be able to get two-way calling between these working. The issue I've got with the second hub, unlike the first one, now, as I said in the first video, getting one of these configured with the SIP details and the DET phone paired and having admin access to it was rare. I didn't really appreciate how rare that actually was. I have got another one, however the admin login details for that have been changed over the past, and also another member of the community as well called John also has one of these in his e-waste collection, with a phone that wasn't set up for voice, but the admin details for this were changed as well. And there is no way into these unless you reset them. And there's a whole load of firmware shenanigans going on that we'll get into in the rest of the video as well. But at the minute, I can't get into this. And the issue I've got with that is I can't get into this to change the PPP password on it to something, because I haven't yet changed free radius or allow radius to accept incoming PPP connections without any password. because in doing so it breaks a load of things on Dalal because it's not a standard configuration, and with not wanting to break anything permanently at the minute, I have left that alone. So we're going to focus predominantly on the original one, get this working first, and then progress with everything else thereafter. So right, I'm going to join you at my screen and we are going to compile the new SipServer that Brad has very kindly put together from us and see where we end up. It turns out setting your keybinds for numerical values from 1 to 9 to change scenes in OBS while using OBS and typing in an IP address is not a good idea, as I've just found out. So, to recap what I've just said, I have built or compiled the new exe on my own machine and transferred it across to this Windows 10 image using FTP. The reason I haven't done it on the VM images themselves is because the ESXi host that's running all of this isn't exactly the best, and as such these VM images are rather slow. The second point is this VM image only has 32 gig of storage, there's only 8 gig usable, and Visual Studio requires about 10 gig to actually be installed. So I've compiled it elsewhere, bought it across, and was in the process of actually trying to load it before I switched a million different screens. So we're in the folder that it's installed in or compiled into. Let's run this. Now I'm excited to see what we get out of this, even from a debug perspective, because hopefully it's going to enable us to actually find out what's going on with all of this and make some progress with it. So what? The code execution cannot be but the Virtual Studio runtime files are installed, and we know they're installed because what? Okay, there's another DLL. Well, we know we're installed because the previous version used to work. So it's definitely not happy. Okay, let's jump back to the original server to see if that loads, and that does. Okay. I need to go through Brad's email just to make sure I've not missed anything in compiling all of this, or whether there is actually a problem that I need to look at in more depth. I will come back to you in a minute. Right, I am back. This is running. Brad's going to scream and shout at me, or scream and shout at me in Discord. I know he is because he's going to be watching this, but I took the easy route out. Now, just to recap, obviously we were seeing the DLL errors in the other clip. Now, based on my research online, that would seem to suggest that redistribute wasn't installed, and we know that definitely was the case because the old version of the SipServer was running. It was just the modified version that Brad had done for us that was generating the DLL errors. Now I'd assumed that maybe this had been done in a different version of Visual Studio, or maybe a 32-bit version, so I installed the 32-bit version of redistribute with exactly the same issue. Now, doing a bit of research online, incorrectly or correctly, seemed to suggest that maybe some flags had been enabled when it was compiling that was causing this issue. Now, all I know is Brad sent me screenshots of it working in his email, and I went back to my Windows 11 machine, and sure enough, this did run as it should have done. So I was left with only really one option, and that was to install Visual Studio on the VM host. But of course, in order to do that, I needed to rebuild it because we didn't have enough storage space in order to do that. So welcome to a new version of Windows 10 and Visual Studio that's installed. That took forever to do, but at least we actually now have a running version of the server, which is exactly what I wanted. So now I can get Zoiper running, get the hub turned on, get that connected, make a couple of calls back and forth. I already have Wireshark running here in the background to capture all of it, and hopefully with the log information that we actually get out of this, I can actually find out what's going on. This is actually the second build of this SipServer as well, because the other one I did get running was coming up with some really weird characters, and I'll throw a screenshot of that up now, probably from Brad's email because he saw it as well. He's made some changes to the SipServer in the background as to how it's handling messages, which I'll go over from his email in a little bit. So right now I'm going to get Zoiper turned on, I'm going to get the hub turned on, and we're actually going to see the messages come through, and then I'm going to take some time to go through it all and hopefully find out what's going on. Right, while that hub is booting, which seems to take an age in comparison to the new ones, I thought I'd actually get Zoiper configured and online. Now, I don't have this set up to the client-side DNS, so we're just going to use the IP address for this at the moment. and yeah, go from there with it. I'm also using a really short extension, so we don't have to set up a really long number that I've got to try and remember like I have got to with the hub. So let's get this connected and hopefully see that pop up in a minute, which it has. Fantastic. Now we just need to wait for the hub to come online, which hopefully should be a minute. And then interestingly, we found out with the hub as well, that 198 space that we saw cropping up was actually due to the hub creating its own network when it can't see an external WAN connection. And we believe that brings itself up so that it creates that sort of walled garden that you get access to say you don't have an internet connection. And speaking of hub, that's just come online. So let's make a call to VoIP and hopefully get the log information and also the Wireshark information as well to be able to find out what's going on with all of this. So I'm just going to call that now. Now that is calling, as you may or may not be able to see. Now this is exactly what happened last time. We actually got to answer it. However, hello, hello, hello. Exactly like last time, we've got no audio. However, we now have all the log information from the server. I now have all the stuff in Wireshark, so I'm going to go through that now off camera to try and work out what's going on with all of this, and hopefully when you see me next we actually might be able to progress with this, and seeing this is a big step. So let me go through this now and I'll be back shortly. Okay, I've just re-registered everything. Changes have been made, messages have been read, things have been learnt. I may be being a bit optimistic, but I've set up OBS to record the desktop audio from VoIP, so that will be interesting. Ignore the noise in the background, it's just the air conditioning unit dumping all the water, because yet again we're having a heat wave in the UK. I've set up my headset. I have no idea how this is going to sound if it works, because OBS is both capturing my microphone and desktop audio, so I may be presumptive and move my microphone out of the way, and I know I didn't say that correctly. I'm nervous. Right, let's move this for a second. Now I'm phoning 101. VoIP is ringing, and by the looks of things in OBS you can see that as well. Hello? Oh my god, we have audio! Oh, I realised that was probably really loud. Hang on, let me cancel that. Where's the cancel? This on the phone. Oh my god, we have audio! That was amazing. I'm not going to keep that on the phone just because I have no idea how it's going to sound, and I don't have this separated into separate channels. And from an editing perspective, that's going to be a pain in the ass. Oh my god, we had audio! We actually had working audio! That's incredible! Oh, that's amazing! I know I said it in the last one, but after 15 years, that's actually working! Like it did 15 years ago! Wow! That I was not expecting. Brad, thank you. You're a legend. Right, let me gather my thoughts. Let me tidy all this up. And let me jump to full screen and give you an explanation as to what I've done to get to this point. Okay, as you could probably tell in that last clip, that kind of took me by surprise a little bit, as the fact that it was just working. I wasn't really expecting it just to work like that. I was expecting to do a bit more troubleshooting, but the fact that it actually does work now means we actually know what the issues were, and I can actually start to explain what was going on. And I say issues because there were more than one with all of this, and there was also some issues with my initial testing last week, which is why I didn't actually pick up on it earlier on. But there's also been some problems with the server, but I'll get into that in this small little explanation as to now what I've changed in order to get this to work. Right, issues, and there were more than one, and you'll have to bear with me while I try and pull all this together because it's coming in from all different places. So, number one, Kodak. In the last video, I suggested that this might be codec related, and the reason for that is when you dial out on this, it comes up saying high in the top right of the phone, which I assumed stood for high definition or a wideband codec. It is certainly a wideband codec and high definition, but BT define it as high definition sound, and the only reason I know that is because ironically it's in the user guide that I mentioned at the start of this video, holding a load of valuable information. Now, by default, this phone, when it tries to talk out, uses the codec G7922, which isn't actually in the free version of VoIP that I was using at the time. Now, normally when that happens, you end up with the server acting as a transcode server, which is basically where it's transcoding between one codec and another codec in order for the call to connect an audio to actually transverse. That version of the server that I've got doesn't support transcoding in any way, shape or fashion, so it's effectively terminating the call. So that's one reason we were seeing the cancel messages come back and forth. Now, problem number 2, I believe, was actually related to the domain itself. Now, the hub only seems to accept SIP messaging from btsip.bt.com, which would make sense from a security point of view. I've seen, even in today's modern world, SIP phones that are sat behind routers that have got universal plug and play enabled that have actually been receiving ghost SIP calls because port 5060 has been opened. So it makes sense for the hubs to be locked down to particular host names or IP address. And certainly through config files that I've been sent for unlocked versions of these, there are a load of BT trusted IP addresses in there. So what I've done, and in my messing around and rushing around in the last video and even this video, I connected the SIP client to the local IP address of that SIP server. I've also now changed that to the domain btsip.bt.com, and so far I've not seen any error messages back and forth or any not accepted here messages come back from the hub with that domain configured. So I believe that was problem number 2. And problem number 3, and I believe probably one of the biggest parts to all of this, was actually the SIP server itself, and more importantly its stability. Now, as I said earlier on, Brad had actually built a different version of the SIP server which we were actually running because we were seeing garbled characters, and I believe the changes he's made to that have actually resolved the stability issues with the server. Now I'm going to read from his email because I don't want to get this wrong. Now he says, "Hey, I've made some further changes to SipServer to prevent the display of garbled characters. The issue was SipServer supports a maximum message size of 2 kilobytes per message. The SipServer treated all messages as regular text or strings internally. When receiving a message, the size of the message was never checked. They were all treated as 2 kilobytes. When displaying data, it was displaying the entire 2 kilobits. The unused portion of the buffer was also displayed, hence the random characters," and then goes on to show a screenshot of what we've seen it running without any of the garbled messages. But I truly believe the tidying up that he's done with the program has actually made it more stable. And the reason I say that is, since recording all of this, the hub and the soft phone have remained absolutely solid throughout. There's been no dropping of any of the registrations that I saw previously, and even the SIP phone that I left on my phone that I forgot about, or the 2 versions of the SIP phone that I left on my phone that I forgot about that I've been trying to register in the background for the past couple of weeks, re-registered to the server and haven't had any issues in terms of registration drops. And the application of the SIP client on my phone that I was having issues answering calls from now answers every single call without issue. So I get the sneaking suspicion that Brad's tidying up of the code has actually restored the stability to this as well, and I believe that's also been key in everything that's been going on. I believe potentially the issues with transcoding and maybe the errors that may have cropped up on the server and the way that it handled the errors and messaging potentially caused parts of this to have issues internally, which is what's caused it to crash, caused the SIP clients to lose their registration. Generally, it seems an awful lot better since he has made those changes, and I cannot thank him enough for doing it. So, is this the end of this video? Absolutely not. I seem to be pushing boundaries over and over and over again. When I set out a couple of weeks ago, I wanted this hub online so we could accept PSTN calls. I then settled for the light being green, and then settled for the phone just ringing even though we had no audio. Obviously now we've been able to have audio using the SipServer, again thanks to Brad. I want to push further and see if we can get one of these registered on Asterisks. Now, a member in the community called Alistair said to me, why don't you use PJ SIP? Now, initially I thought the legacy SIP might be better for the hub just based on compatibility. However, that may have been ill-advised, and PJ SIP might actually be the better option for this. Doing a bit more digging into PJ SIP, we do seem to have the ability to maybe not code out but remove part of the authentication layer, and he has suggested that a SIP client that he's using, he's been able to get register with incorrect details, but hasn't done any testing beyond that. So it's certainly possible we might be able to get the hub to register to Asterisks, but whether or not we will then be authenticated to then do anything else on the Asterisks server or not, I don't know, and that includes being able to make a public PSTN call. Now, I need to do a research for all of this because Alistair hasn't given me any configuration. All I do know is that this needs to be manually built in the Asterisks configuration files, not within FreePBX. So I need to work out what I need to do and where I need to put that config in those files in order to get this to work. So I think the next thing for me to do is to fire up Asterisks and then actually get that online, and I will see you back when we're making changes to config files. I really wish past Adam would think about future Adam when he does any of this or opens his mouth to say, I want to do this, because this has not been simple by any stretch of imagination. This has actually been quite difficult to try and get to work, and it's also not been helped by the fact that the hub, as I said in the previous video, only registers every sort of 10 to 15 minutes. So it meant changing anything on the server and either waiting for the hub or rebooting the hub literally became really tedious. So I actually ended up resorting to VoIP in order to try and make this process quicker, and hopefully VoIP is now emulating the hub in that it's got the domain in it and it's also got the username in it, and that does now seem to be working after a bit of modification with some files. So first of all, we've effectively got an identity file which is basically matching all traffic from the IP address for that particular endpoint. We've got an ARR style file which is basically the maximum amount of contacts that that particular account can register as, so in this case 1. We've also got the endpoint details set up for that particular extension as well. Nope, there's no password in it. And the key to all of this was actually getting Asterisks to actually accept requests from an alias, which in this case is the btsip.bt.com domain. Now, as I said, all of this is set up and VoIP is registering with those details. So in theory, if I go and turn the hub on now, I should hopefully see that connect. And if it does connect, we'll then see what exactly we can access from an Asterisks point of view, because although VoIP has registered, I haven't tested VoIP with making any calls back and forth to anything, so this will be the first test. So I'm going to go and turn the hub on because it's going to take a few minutes to boot, and hopefully I will come back just as this is starting to register in Wireshark. The hub is just coming into sync. Now, if this works and we can actually phone a local Asterisks service such as Echo Test, the next thing for us to actually do would then be to connect a physical trunk or an external provider to FreePBX and see if we can actually make an external call on this. Now, future, yay! I was about to say future Adam is going to kill me, but I'll take that as a win. That is really cool. The light's green. Let's see if we can phone Echo Test. Yes!
In this mode,
I'm hoping
everything you say will be repeated back to you just as soon as it is.
I'm hoping you can hear that. That is the Echo Test, and if I clear this off the screen, we should see the RTP data going through, which we do. We have an audio call going back and forth. That is absolutely incredible, and I'm really happy. Future Adam's not going to be happy because we've now got to get an external call working, but I'm really happy with that. That's really, really cool. Right, let's go and get an external call working. Right, so I have configured a God knows decades old SipGate account on FreePBX, which is registered. I have set up an outbound route as well for this to use. So I suppose the next thing is for me to actually make a call on this to see if it goes through to my mobile. Now I'm purposely not going to be showing my mobile in this because I don't want the outbound caller ID to come through and you guys to see it just yet. I will sort something out later assuming this works, but first of all I need to give the guys in Discord the ability to phone me first. Now I was going to show Wireshark, however thinking about it, Wireshark is going to show all the invites, which is going to include my mobile number and potentially the extension or the outbound call ID on this as well. So for now you're going to see me here, and I suppose the only thing left for me to do now is actually phone my mobile and see if it works. Now that is ringing. And my phone is ringing. Let's just answer it and see if we have audio. I suppose I could put this on loudspeaker, couldn't I? Hello? Yes! Hello! We have audio! Oh, that is amazing! Oh, I can't believe that. That is fantastic. Let me close that. Oh, that's really cool. Let's try phoning it to see if that works and see if the config I've put in place on Asterisks manually to talk back to this works, because of course it not being an extension in the GUI means that I've got to do everything in the config files by hand. Let's phone that now. And it rings and it's come up with a caller ID. Do we have audio? Hello? 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 Yes, we do have audio. Oh, that is awesome. I am absolutely over the moon that that works. I'm speechless. I can't believe we've now come full circle, and with the original hub as well. I was expecting to have to do more work with all of this, but I haven't. It just seems to have worked, which is just blowing my mind. I know I keep saying it, but 15 years on and it's connected, but it's just had its first external audio call in all that time as well. That has absolutely blown me away. I'm speechless. That is so cool. I'm so happy that we've got to this point, because I was fully expecting this not to work, and as you've probably seen in the background for a little while, I actually managed to get hold of a brand new in-box BT Home Hub. Now this is running a version of the firmware that was developed when this was first sent out. So unlike the other hubs that have been online and have been upgraded and of course there's issues with firmware, that is running a version of the firmware that should enable us to actually input custom, or not custom, but it actually insert the SipServer and login details into it, because it's running the original Thompson Speed Touch firmware, although within BT wrapper, which was a lot less locked down at the time. Now there are limitations to this. With everything being configured manually in Asterisks, it means I have to configure everything manually in Asterisks moving forward with this. So getting the other hub online with the older firmware might actually be preferable, because I can then configure it all in the GUI and it makes life a lot easier. That being said, if we do put all of these online from a public IP point of view, that's going to be extremely acceptable to things, where it's susceptible even to things, whereas the new one that's running version E, the original one, is slightly more locked down and secure. So I'm a bit more trusting of that one being online rather than that one. But that is something for us to look at a later point. I'm absolutely thrilled that that works. I'm so cool. Alistair, thank you so much for giving me the idea to actually go and dig into PJSip a bit more. Arguably, if I'd done that last episode, we might already got to this point. I don't honestly know, but it's been a fantastic journey with all of this, and I've met so many amazing people along the ride for all of this, and some of them I couldn't have done this without. You have all been fantastic. You know who you are. I'm going to talk about you in a minute when I actually jump back to my chair, which is going to be now, because otherwise I'm going to keep rambling. Right, I will see you in a minute. So it's actually been a couple of days since I last recorded that, and it's actually given me time to reflect on all of this. And don't worry, I'm going to keep this short, because as it stands, this is one of the shortest videos that's going to go out on the channel, and arguably probably one of the better ones to get to a conclusion on all of it. But It's been about 6 weeks since I had that hub in my hand with this wonderful idea and concept of trying to get the hub online from a broadband and also a phone perspective. Now, I didn't quite realise at the time how difficult getting the phone online was going to be. Now, arguably, it's not been a massive headache, but it's been a massive learning experience for me. So learning things about hashing and trying to encrypt and decrypt passwords and all of that has been very, very valuable. I'm so pleased I went down the route of doing it. And also the feedback I've received from a lot of people, not only in the comments, but also via email, generally backed up the route that I was trying to take. So I'm happy that it was very well received. This video has actually been one of the most popular on the channels. It's had almost 250,000 impressions that have gone out. So something I'm doing, you guys seem to enjoy, and it blows me away because when I started all of this back in March, I never expected to have almost 1,700 of you following me and watching my videos. It's been mad. The other thing I didn't really anticipate is the community that would get together and back me on all of this in the background. So everyone that's reached out to me in the YouTube comments have actually given help and suggestions and wanted to help. Most of them are now in the Discord community. There is Brad, who originally added the debugging into the SipServer and also helped with the coding for how it's handling messages in the background. He has spent a phenomenal amount of time not only on that, but also trying to reverse engineer the firmware on the hub as well. He has spent a massive amount of time on everything, so I'm truly grateful to you, Brad. John, who has joined Discord many months ago, who asked for the link after we got talking and literally came into Discord and said, "Hi, here's my e-waste pile," and literally sent a picture of all the kit he had. And I laugh because it's true. Literally everything we've needed, John has had, including one of these hubs. And John was also kind enough to actually strip his apart and actually dump the firmware from these. So we've actually been able to actually try and reverse engineer all of that as well. Alistair, who gave me the pointers for looking back into PJ-SIP, but also took the time to write a SIP authorization proxy to sit between Asterisks and the handset if we needed it to inject actually valid credentials into it. We didn't actually need it in the end, but it's the time and dedication that people go to like this that just blows me away. There's Oliver, who's also in Discord, who took the time to go and order hardware from China to be able to dump the ROM from his, which fortunately we didn't need at the time. But again, it's people investing money into something that they don't need to. So it's gone a long way. And then we've got Callum, who hasn't yet joined Discord, but sent me unencrypted files for all of these and firmware and recovery software to actually be able to dig into all of those as well. Things that people didn't need to do, but everyone who has actually reached out and given assistance has been invited to Discord, and the community that is now growing in Discord has just blown me away. It has been phenomenal. I didn't expect it. And speaking of Discord, I do plan to open it up to everyone to come in and have a look, because we do document exactly what's going on, future ideas, advice, home lab setups. It is growing at the minute. It is very much work in progress, but I would very much like for anyone in the comments or anyone that wants to join Discord to join Discord. There might be a Patreon subscription at some point in the future to give additional behind the scenes access to stuff. I'm not entirely sure yet. I don't want to make any money off of the channel, and also I don't really want to add any pressure to be able to add anything in terms of sort of what's going on in the background, because I have enough going on with everything as it is in life, and there is a train in the background. But anything that I do make off of the channel will literally just be reinvested back into hardware. Doing all the smaller stuff is relatively quite sustainable at the minute, but getting into some of the bigger stuff we've got coming up is going to get quite expensive, especially from a shipping point of view. So anything that we do make off of the channel will be directly reinvested back into it at this moment in time. And speaking of what is upcoming, get subscribed, because there is an awful lot of stuff upcoming which I am really excited about. So we have a bonded server from an old UK ISP that is about 20 years old. It ran on ML PPP. That is currently on the floor. It'll be great to try and resurrect that and see what bonding was like back in the day with old Sangoma hardware, so I'm really excited for that. Brad is also trying to reverse engineer the BT Talk soft phone on the back of all of this as well, so there'll be a video hopefully on the BT Talk soft phone that came with all of this as well. I have hopefully a Juniper MX9600 turning up, which weighs over 100 kilos, so that I'm not looking forward to, well, I am looking forward to it, but I'm not at the same time. I'll chuck a couple of pictures up here of what exactly that looks like, but it weighs a metric ton and also has the power requirements of a nuclear power station. So we will see how that ends up. We have MX 104s hopefully turning up as well. We've got bits to do with the ASN and IP space. I haven't forgotten about that. That's still very much in the pipeline. We still want to revisit Smoothwall. There's a load more of the build stuff coming up, but everyone seems to be enjoying the off-topic reverse engineering stuff and messing around with old hardware from sort of this time period. So I'm going to do a few more of those. I also have hopefully some ADVA GE 114 exchange equipment turning up, which isn't the normal FSP stuff that you'd have for leased lines. This is normally for sort of carrier backhaul termination. So I'm really excited to be looking into that. I don't know whether it comes with the carrier chassis or whether we've actually just got one of the Z end or B end endpoints. I need to work out exactly what we've got coming with all of that, but there is a lot of stuff upcoming with stuff. And speaking of people sending me hardware, as always, that is coming from Zen, and I need to give a massive shout out to Zen. Without Zen, as I say, this wouldn't be possible. They originally gave me the original MSAM, which started all of this and enables me to do all of this. So a very big shout out to Zen. If you are in the UK and you are looking for broadband, go and visit Zen. They are an amazing bunch of people. The link is in the video description below. And on that note, I think I have covered everything I wanted to do in all of this. So if you are still here and watching, you are amazing. I cannot thank you enough. I will leave you alone and I will see you in the next video. Take care.